hello, and thank you so much for joining me for the podcast of the True Power from Within. I do pray each and every day that this podcast touches you in the most amazing and encouraging way. So, this morning I have called this podcast, You Have Fought Bigger Giants. And I'm going to be coming out of the book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 7 and verse 14. So, first of all, I want to give a little bit of perspective to this, okay? So let me give an example. When we have children, right, and they're beginning to walk, right, and they stand up and they initially take that very first step, right? We're holding on to them and they take their first step and we are overjoyed, right? And so we know that they're capable of taking that first step. So then we begin to stand them up, right? And we continue to back further and further and further away from them so that they have a longer distance, right? And they can begin to take more than one step, right? And so that they can get the notion that they can do it, right? And I feel like in our relationship with God, that's not any different, right? You know, he gives us the ability to take the first step, right? He gives us the ability to get help from the addiction, right? He gives us the ability to get our first apartment after getting out of prison. He gives us our ability to overcome the depression and to start the business and to get rid of our limiting beliefs, right? He does all of these things to show us that we're capable, right? But then we feel like we get into a hard season, right? Sometimes we get into the mindset of, this is so hard. I can't believe I'm going through this. You know, I'm having a really tough time right now. I don't see a way out, right? But in Ecclesiastes chapter 7, verse 14, it says, in the day of prosperity, be joyful, but in the day of adversity, consider. God has made the one as well as the other. I think that is such a powerful verse, right? Because in the day of prosperity, be joyful, right? So in the days that we know, okay, so I understand that I'm going through a hard time, right? But, you know, I do know that prosperity is on the way. I know that I'm going through a difficult season, and seasons are very important for us to understand, right? Because we know that there is a season for everything, right? So there's a season for joy. There's a season for mourning, right? There's a season for everything. There's a season for planting. There's a season for watering. There's a season for harvest, right? We go through these seasons, right? And just because we've already gone through a particular season doesn't mean that we will not go through that same season again. But God says that in the day of prosperity, be joyful, right? So when we know that we have overcome something, or as in a baby, when we know that our child has taken their first step, we know that they're capable of taking two. So we know that in a day of prosperity, in a day that we feel like we have had a very successful day, or we have done everything on our to-do list, or we have done something hard, right? Be joyful in that moment, right? But in the day of adversity, consider. So when I see this word consider, to me, I'm thinking, okay, in the day of adversity, right? Or in a day when we feel like we're struggling, or we have to do something really hard, or we feel like maybe we weren't the best mom or the best wife, or we feel like we didn't do as much that day as we should have, right? Maybe we had an off day and we didn't get as much done, or maybe we started our day with a particular outcome in mind and that outcome did not happen, right? So most of the time we get down on ourselves and we feel like maybe we're not capable, right? Or we feel like we're not good enough, or we feel like because we did not achieve that particular day, that we have failed for the day. Which I feel like is off, because we all know that we have those off days. Just like we know that when our children begin to walk and they take that first step and that second step, right? They're going to fall. right? But what do? We pick them back up and we say, okay, what I used to say to my kids is shake it off. Let's try it again, right? When they fall or they get hurt, I'm like, all right, shake it off. Let's try again. We have to learn to do that in ourselves, because we know that in the day of prosperity, the day when we have a great day, right? The day when we do everything that we want to do, the day that we feel like we have stepped out of that depression, the day that we feel like the day that we feel like, okay, this is the day that I feel like there's a release on my life and I'm overcoming this addiction, or there's a release and I feel like God is pushing me into my vision, right? Or there's a release when we feel like, okay, our child is on the right track, or, there's a release on the day of prosperity, of joy, of peace, of patience, of understanding, right? But in the day of adversity, so on those hard days, right? On the hard days when we feel like I'm a failure today, or I did not get everything done that I was intended to do, or I did not post on social media like I should have, or, I didn't get into my business like I should have. I went to work, but I didn't give it all that I had. I was, with my kids, but I didn't give them my full undivided attention, right? I wasn't completely present. And on those days when you lay down at night and you're rehashing the hours of your day, right? And the actions of your day, and you say, I cannot believe I didn't get this done, right? Or I cannot believe that I messed up today, or I can't believe that I was so unmotivated, or I just didn't feel it today, and we start to get down on ourselves. It says, in the day of adversity, consider. And so, what I want to tell you today is, in those days of adversity, consider the things that you've already overcome. Consider the things that you did do that day and not that you didn't do that day. We begin to really get down on ourselves, and we criticize ourselves, and we talk bad to ourselves, and we consider ourselves failures, and we begin to get all these limiting beliefs about ourselves because for one day or one season we did not do as if we felt like we should. Meaning we didn't achieve what we thought we should achieve. We are still in that depression, but we're still in depression, or we're still going through a job loss, or we're still going through a financial struggle. When you get into those days or those seasons, you have to consider the day of prosperity. In our home, David and Goliath is a big topic, right? Because you have to deal with a lot of things with destiny. There's a lot of doctors and nurses and this and that you have to deal with, right? So there's a lot of stuff that comes. There's a lot of giants that have to be fought. And, when I text my husband or I call him and I'm telling him about, something that I had to deal with again, right? Because it was the same thing that I dealt with 90 days ago, or the same thing I dealt with 60 days ago, or the same thing I dealt with last week. I'm going through this again and again and again, right? And he always responds back that about David and Goliath, right? He's like, okay, David, go ahead, right? And so I have to consider that even though I continue to fight the same battle all the time, I've fought the same battle before. I've been in this season before, right? I've had to plant this seed before. I had to water this seed before, right? So it's all about understanding seasons, right? Because we're going to have a season of joy. We're going to have a season of mourning. There's a season for everything. And having an understanding of a season, or in what the purpose of a season is, when it comes to God and it comes to our life, we understand the seasons, right? We understand that there's winter, spring, summer, and fall. We understand those seasons. Just as those seasons we feel, there's also seasons in our lives that we have to understand. We have to understand that every season's not going to be full of prosperity. We have to understand that every season is not going to be easy. We have to understand that every season is not going to look like the one before. And every season may not fall in that particular order that we expect them to fall in, right? We expect if we go through a hard season that the next one should be easy, right? If we go through a season of lack, we think the next season should be a season of favor and abundance. And in most times it is. But we're going to have those hard seasons, right? We're going to have those seasons where we're going to have to consider, right? That word to me is profound in this particular passage. In the day of prosperity, be joyful, but in the day of adversity, consider. To me, I feel like when the word is saying consider, I'm thinking consider those days of prosperity. Instead of focusing solely on the adversity, think about the season of prosperity, right? Think about, instead of getting down on yourself, think about the giants that you've already overcome. And when we get into a season where we feel like, okay, here we are fighting another giant, sometimes we look at that giant as if it is bigger than any giant that we've ever fought before. When in reality, most of the time, we have already fought the same giant before. Maybe one even bigger than that. I know when I came out of prison and I was recovering from my addiction, I had a child that was going through the same thing. And in fact, he got in trouble for that. Right? And I was thinking to myself, I just did a drug class, but now I have to go take a drug class with him too? Right? I just did all of this. Why do I have to go through this all over again? And I didn't understand the season that I was in. I don't think it was about taking the drug class with my son, right? It was an opportunity for me to be able to go to this class with him, but yet pour into him to do something different. Was the classes, oh gosh, I didn't like them. I'm going to be honest. I didn't, right? Because I was having flashbacks of a past season. I'm like, Lord, why am I fighting this battle when I just fought this battle? But it was a moment that I could spend with my son and be able to pour into him and say, I just went through this, right? I have this knowledge. I can share this with you. I can pour this into you, right? It wasn't just about the horrible drug class I had to go to that I just went through, right? It was about a season that my son needed me to be there with him, to be able to pour into him because I had already fought the giant that he was fighting. So we have to consider those moments when we feel like adversity is surrounding us, right? We feel like we are in this lake of adversity, right? We are in the middle. It's deep. We feel like we're drowning. We can't go anywhere. We can't do anything. We just feel like that we're in a losing battle. We are drowning. And it says, consider. Can you consider when you're in a season where you feel like you're lacking in something? Or are you in a season where you don't feel that motivated? Are you in a season where you feel like you're not focused? And you're in a season when things are hard and you're in a financial crisis, or you've lost your job, or you're in a season of depression, or you're in a season of anxiety, or you're in a season of divorce, or you're in a season of a new relationship, whatever, because new relationships are hard, right? So when you're in those seasons of adversity, consider the giants that you have already fought. Because most of the time, you have already fought that battle before. Maybe in a different form, right? Maybe in a different form. I'll be honest with you. When we first got Destiny, I was angry. Not because I was going to be her full-time mama, but I was angry because I felt like I was picking up the pieces again of someone else's addiction, right? When I had just had to fight through my own. right? I had just got sober. I had just started trying to get my life together, right? I had went through this drug class with my son, trying to help my children get their lives together, right? And trying to assume my own responsibility as a mother back. And I was working really, really hard at that. And then all of a sudden, we get the phone call to get Destiny, this beautiful little girl that has no voice, that could not protect herself, that could not tell us what was going on. And we get this horrible phone call. And it was a blessing to have a bonus daughter, right? I didn't quite yet get the whole concept of what it took to take care of a little girl like this, right? I didn't understand it, but I was okay with it until I wasn't. Until it really set in that I was picking up the pieces of somebody else's addiction, right? I was relinquishing the responsibility from someone else because of an addiction. I was picking up her pieces when I was still trying to pick up my own. I was trying to clean up her damage while I was still trying to clean up my own. But it says, in the day of prosperity, be joyful, but in the day of adversity, consider. So I had to consider, because somebody had to be there to pick up my pieces. Somebody had to be there to take care of my children when I decided that I was going to make the bad choices that I made. Somebody had to be there to hold my kids and be there to clothe my kids and feed my kids when I decided to make bad choices. So why would God not use me in the same way? And it took me a long time to think about it like that. And I wouldn't change it for the world, honestly. I would not. Like, somebody would have to fight me to be able for me to release that little girl to anybody else. It would be over my dead body. but the beginning, I didn't see that. All I could see at that moment is that I was cleaning up somebody else's mess. Right? So I had to consider that somebody else had to pick up my mess. I had to consider, even though it was hard, right? And I had never taken care of a special needs child before. I had no earthly idea what to do when it came to the medical system and doctors and all of that. But I was able to fight those battles, right? I was able to fight that giant. And now, when I get frustrated, I'm like, you have fought bigger giants than this. Because you used to not know anything about the medical system. You used to not know anything about dealing with, authorizations and insurance and evaluations and all of that. You had no idea. But you fought this giant so many times that now you're helping fight them for your grandsons too. See, everything happens in a season, and sometimes we have to go before others in that particular season because God has an assignment in that season for us. Sometimes we feel like assignment is hard, but we have to consider that we've already fought bigger giants. That's why God has put that assignment on us, because he knows that we're qualified, because he's qualified us to handle that particular assignment. It's just like I was talking about at the beginning. When we stand our babies up and they take one step, we back up so they can take 2 more steps. We back up so they can take 3 or 4 more steps. But then at some point they fall. right? And when I'm talking about falling, I'm talking about sometimes we don't feel as if we're qualified in that particular season, right? We don't consider the past seasons that we've been through and that God has qualified us in that particular assignment or that particular season for what we're going through now. Are we going to fall? Yes. Are we going to screw it up? Yes. Are we going to win every single time? No. But just like we do with our kids, we have to get up. Consider the days that we fought the giant. Consider those days where God brought us out of that same thing before or something even harder. And he allowed us to survive and he allowed us to prosper in that season, even though we had went through something really, really hard. Can you consider the days of prosperity instead of considering the days of adversity? Can we start focusing on more of what we've overcome instead of what we're going through now? Because everything that you went through in the past has already qualified you to tackle what you're going through right now. You've been through harder things and you've overcome them. You've had greater adversities. You've had harder seasons. But now we're in a season of, maybe we're in a season of growth. Maybe we're in a season of watering, right? Maybe we feel like we're almost to the harvest. We almost feel the breakthrough. I know I do. Right? I know that I do. I still wake up some days and say, I'm not qualified for this. I still wake up some days and say, how, can I grow this business? How can I, I'm so focused on perfectionism, right? In my business that I'm missing the whole point, right? Because God did not only bring me here into this business to create income, but he gave this a particular vehicle to also share my story through that. But I watch everybody else that's in the same business and I'm like, they have such pretty stories. They have such pretty posts. They have such pretty pictures. I don't have all that, right? I'm not that creative. But God didn't create me to be a visual creator. I am a voice creator. I am a speaker. I am an encourager. I am an empowerer. So when we realize that the season that we're in is not necessarily to try to learn something that we're not good at, it's to take the things that we are good at and sprinkle those into the season that we're in so that God can grow us in other ways. And I hope y'all are getting this. But in the day of adversity, consider the joys that you have already overcome. Consider the battles that you've already overcome. Stop getting down on yourself because you feel like you're a failure because one day didn't go how you wanted it to go. Stop getting down on yourself because you're depressed one day. Stop getting down on yourself because you feel like you didn't finish your whole entire to-do list, or maybe you forgot something. Stop getting down on yourself because you're not the best mom today or yesterday. Consider the days of prosperity. Think about the days that you did overcome. Think about the days that you were not depressed. Think about the days that you killed it as a mom or a dad. Think about the days that you shared your story with somebody and helped somebody. Think about the days that you brought joy to your family or your family laughed because of a dinner that you guys had together, right? And you just talked about things. I mean, we talk about the craziest things at our dinner table when all the kids and grandkids are here. So think about those moments. Think about the joyful moments instead of focusing on the moments of adversity. Stop dwelling on the days that you have failed and start concentrating on the days that you won. Because you've already fought bigger giants than you're fighting right now. You've already been through harder things. God's already showed you that you are an overcomer, that you can do hard things, that you can grow in your season. He has already showed you these things. But it's time for you to start focusing on the joyful moments instead of the moments of adversity. Because it's in those joyful moments that you're going to find your biggest power surge. Because there was something in that joyful moment. There was something in that prosperity moment that God was trying to show you, so that in the days of adversity, you had that to fall back on. Right? And say, you know what? I'm not feeling it today, but you know what? I killed it yesterday. Right? You know, I had an off day and I didn't get all my to-do list done, but that's okay because I do have another day tomorrow. And I did get this done today. It's the small things. It's not these big giant events of prosperity, or when you hit your first 50,000 or $100,000 a year. It's not in those big moments. It's in these small moments of growth. It's in the small moments of God showing that you can do hard things. It's in the small moments of sitting at the dinner table having dinner with your kids. It's in the small moments where your child takes their first step. It's not always in the big moments that God is trying to show you something. It's in the small moments. It's in the small seasons. It's in the small, it's in the small things that He is trying to show you your greatest power. So in the day of prosperity, be joyful. But in the day of adversity, consider those days of prosperity. Consider where you've already been. Consider where you've come from. Consider all the things that you've overcome already. Consider the wins from yesterday and say, you know what? I didn't get all those wins today, but you know what? Yesterday I was killing it. And guess what? Tomorrow, I have a chance tomorrow to kill it again. We're not always going to be our best every day, but we can still strive to be the best version of ourselves. Even though you don't get up every day and, clean your house and do your laundry and you be this, all-star mom and, all of this stuff, right? You don't always cook the best dinners and, I know I don't. But on the days that you feel like maybe you failed a little bit, consider the things that you did the day before. Consider the things that you did the week before. Consider the things that you went through in last season and overcome. Stop focusing only on the adversity and focus on the prosperity, because you have fought bigger giants. So I thank you so much for hanging with me today. Hopefully I added value to your day. And I do hope that you have an absolutely amazing day. And I will see you again very, very soon. Bye-bye.